Yes, well, welcome everyone. We're glad you're here. Where shall we begin? Planning and budgeting for the coming year. So this is a hot topic and we're excited to have some conversation about it. The agenda for today, we are going to do some welcome and introductions, and then we're going to hear from Jody Versa about some funding overview, very important information, just to kind of frame our conversation going forward. And then we're going to get to hear from a couple of panelists, Kirsten Fugelseth and Kelly McGowan. They are here to talk about their ideas and how they're tackling these questions. But then after each presentation, we're going to open it up and we're going to have time for some large group discussion, questions, comments, hearing your ideas as well. And then we will get into breakout groups by context. You will be able to choose which breakout group makes the most sense for you to join for just additional reflection and thinking with your colleagues. And then we'll do some wrap up and be done for today. So our objectives, we want to review local data to inform decisions for next year. So by the end of this presentation, these are things we're hoping that you feel confident doing. Share planning and budgeting strategies and guiding questions with colleagues, and identify and access data that can be useful in making programming and budget decisions. So that's our goal, that you walk away feeling confident with these things today. So I am Lindsay Poost. I am the Atlas Numeracy and Special Projects Coordinator, and I am joined by many wonderful women on this call that will help lead this session. Astrid, if you want to come on and introduce yourself.
Yes, thanks, Lindsay. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Astrid Leiden, and I'm with the Adult Ed team at the Minnesota Department of Education, and I'm the Professional Development Specialist on the team, and I'm really looking forward to this conversation with you all today. Thanks for being here.
And we have Jody Versa, if you would mind coming on and saying hello.
Hey everybody, good to be with you this afternoon. I am Jody. I am also on the Adult Ed team at the Minnesota Department of Education. And yeah, I look forward to this conversation today.
Awesome. And we have our two panelists, Kirsten and Kelly, and we will be hearing from them later. If you wanted to say hello now, you can. Otherwise, I know we will hear more from you later.
Hello, everybody.
Oops. Hello, everyone.
Awesome. Thank you both for being here. We're very excited to hear and learn, to learn from you. So we're going to start right now. Jody's going to come back on and talk about the funding overview. So I will hand it over to Jody.
Great. Thanks, Lindsay. So I think we would just want to take a little time as we get started here today to set the stage in terms of where are we at with funding for our adult ed system for the upcoming fiscal year. So we're talking about fiscal year 23, just to be clear. So that is the year that starts on this upcoming July 1st and runs through June 30th, 2023. So that's the period of time we're kind of talking about today. As with every year, each grantee or each consortium will need to submit the annual application to MDE on or before June 1st of this year. And as many of you know, as you're familiar with that, part of the annual application are the tables, and the tables are where you submit data from your program, student counts and hours counts and information about your staffing and your sites and your providers. So like the last couple of years in that annual application due this year, there will be both a table A and a table A1. So just to review what those are, make sure we're all on the same page. Table A has always been an important part of the annual application for many years. Table A is a report of contact hours for the previous May 1st to April 30th time period. So when you submit that application on June 1st of this year, you will report on table A actual hours for the time period we are currently in right now, right? So from May 1st of 2021 to April 30th of 2022. That's the same as it's always been. In addition, you will again submit table A1, which this was a table that was added to the annual application in 2020. So this will be the third year that we have this table A1 as part of the annual application. So that table A1 was in response to COVID and the pandemic, and it is a count of contact hours from the 1-year period immediately before the pandemic started affecting us here in Minnesota. So that table A1 will have contact hours from March 2019 to March 2020. So for those of you who've been around a few years, you know that those hours shouldn't change, right? The hours you report this year on table A1 should be exactly the same as what you reported last year on table A1 and the year before on table A1, because that is from a time period in the past. And, as you know, we've used those hours in the last couple of years, basically to sort of hold everybody harmless, and kind of just keep things status quo and not have the disruption of dealing with the fact that contact hours were significantly impacted by the pandemic. So what's different this year in 2022 is that when you submit that application on our end at MDE, we will take a look at your table A and your table A1, and whichever of those tables has the higher number of contact hours, that will be used when we calculate the distribution of funding, which is different than the last couple of years. For the last couple of years, we just automatically used A1. We didn't even really look at table A for purposes of funding. We just used everybody's table A1. So I want to give a quick recognition and shout out to the Contact Hour Working Group, which was a group of adult education folks from across the state who met several times last year and really hashed out a lot of questions about what should we do for funding for fiscal year 23. And that group ultimately landed on this scenario as the recommendation. So we are moving forward with this for fiscal year 23. So if you can move ahead, Lindsay, thank you. A couple of implications of this. Right now, what we are hearing, although I'm super interested if you have info otherwise, put it in the chat because that'd be interesting to hear. But right now, what we seem to be hearing is it seems pretty likely that all consortia or all grantees will still have more hours on table A1 than actual table A hours. Seems to be the most plausible scenario at this point. So if that turns out to be the case, then we're looking again at the distribution of funding for fiscal year 23 looking very, very similar to fiscal year 22 and fiscal year 21. So in other words, at this point, it is a safe assumption to assume level funding for your program, or a little bit of a bump if we get a little bit of a bump in the total statewide pot available to distribute. Now, important note though, I know you are probably aware that in the current fiscal year, we had this infusion of cash, right? We had an additional 10 million that was available to our statewide system. And so that was awarded out to most of the consortia, decided to accept those funds. So you all received some additional funding for use for your programming this year. That was one-time funds. Those were COVID funds. Those were federal dollars. The federal government threw a lot of money at states as a result of the pandemic, and states had to kind of scramble a little bit to figure out how to spend all that money. And we got 10 million, like, here at Adult Ed, spend this money in 1 year. So we don't have any reason to believe that would happen again next year. So you should move forward with the assumption that you will not have those additional dollars next year, but that next year you will be back to sort of your baseline of state and federal ABE funding for the year. So as we look forward, I just want to acknowledge, because I know I'm hearing from folks around the state that we're starting to think about this. So I just want to acknowledge that May 1st of this year, which is, not that far away, a couple months out, that starts a new contact hour reporting period. So starting May 1st, 2022, those hours will be the hours that will be counted and reported on Table A in the annual application submitted in June of 2023. So another way to say this is that contact hours as of May 1st this year possibly may, quote unquote, count for funding for fiscal year 24, which starts on July 1st, 2023. So I just want to acknowledge that because I know people are thinking about that. But I want to just make sure that you know that for today's conversation, we can't really look that far out yet. So we're really focusing on fiscal year 23 and planning and budgeting for that year, which starts of July 1 of this year. And for that year, you can just sort of try to take as much reassurance as you can out of the fact that your funding, it should be safe and relatively stable for fiscal year 23. So that's the background I have. Unless there are any pressing questions, I will hand it back to you, Lindsay.
Yes, thank you so much. If there are any immediate questions, please put them in the chat. And we will be sure to address them. And if you're typing, we can always come back and make sure that we do get those answered. So thank you so much, Jody, for sharing that background information. So we will now hear from our panelists. So I'll invite Kirsten to come on and introduce herself and where she is. I'm just looking at the chat, so all of a sudden I got distracted. Where she is currently working, and yeah, I'll be quiet. Sorry.
Hi, everybody. It's nice to be with you this afternoon. So my name is Kirsten Fugelseth. I oversee the Northwest Service Cooperative Adult Basic Ed Consortium up in the northwest corner of the state. I put a little map there on the screen for you so you can kind of see it. Oversees 30 school districts this year that are members. We have 11 counties. We are in 2 WS workforce service areas. We have 13 classrooms located within our consortium. And I am the overall coordinator. We have a couple of data entry specialists. We have 11 teachers. And this year, for the first time, we have a tech coordinator. And so that's just kind of an overview of the size and scope of what we're trying to do. We're very rural. We have some very big classrooms, but mostly a lot of smaller one-room schoolhouse classrooms that we serve.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And Kelly, if you want to come on and say a little bit about yourself and your program.
Can you see me?
Yes.
Okay, great. I can only see you. Hi, good afternoon. My name is Kelly McGowan, and I am the director of Metro South ABE. And a little bit about Metro South. We're located in South Hennepin County, and our consortium includes Bloomington, Edina, Eden Prairie, and Richfield. And we have a history of 40 plus years of programming. We offer ESL, we offer GED, we offer adult diploma, college prep, career pathways, and family literacy in the consortium. And in a typical year, we serve about 1,800 students. And we program September through June 30th. And we have an amended little short, very short summer school program. And that's still right now in conversation what that will look like for this coming July. But our classes are typically Monday through Thursday morning on site at one of our campuses is in Eden Prairie at Hennepin Technical College. And then we have our main campus, we call it CEC, and that's in Bloomington. It's in the old Lincoln High School. So we also have classes Monday, Wednesday evenings at both sites. And we have a Tuesday, Thursday remote class that we're offering right now. And at our Bloomington site only, we have classes. We have 4 levels of class on Saturday mornings. We have a family lit class in Eden Prairie. And we have a real robust volunteer-led program. We have Metro South volunteers, and we have over 100 participants or 100 volunteers who help support our programming. And some of those volunteers lead classes in the consortium. So we have Edina, Eden Prairie, and Richfield that are all volunteer-led. So that is a little bit about us. We do have a wide variety of students coming from all over the world, and we have American-born students as well. And our adult diploma program follows the standards for the Bloomington Public Schools, K-12, well, for secondary school. That's a little bit about us.
Thank you so much. All right, we're going to get into our first question, and we're going to give time for both Kirsten and Kelly to answer this. So the first question we have is, what data or information are you considering as you are budgeting and planning for next year? So I will first turn this over to Kirsten.
Thank you, Lindsay. So I didn't say, I think, in the introduction that I'd been with ABE for a long time. I was hired as a teacher back in 1996, and I took over as coordinator of this program in 2005. And I have to say, 16 years later, every year feels like a new year, and like I'm just starting this again. Like I'm just new at this job. And so there's always something a little bit different, a little bit that I have to consider that wasn't the same as what I considered the year before as I was doing budgeting and planning. And so these are sort of the three areas as I was thinking about this presentation that probably I put my most energy toward. I look toward what's happening at sites, what's happening with staffing, and then just any ongoing projects that we might have underway. So I'll go ahead and let you go to the next slide. So considering the site level things that I think about as I'm planning a budget, I always look at our prior year outcomes or as one of the first things that I kind of consider. I look at all the different sites. Again, we have 13 classroom sites. So we have different teachers that have different numbers of contracted hours. Some are there for 2 to 4 hours a week, and some are there for 32 hours a week. And so as I look especially at the smaller programs, I always try to see, are they generating hours? Are they at least generating as many contact hours as contract hours in some of those smaller locations? That's one of the sort of measures I use. And are the students experiencing success? You know, what are those outcomes looking like? Are we getting level completions and GED completions? And if that's not the case, what is it that we need to change? So it might be something with training, or we might need to put some more money toward training, or better understanding of performance targets and things like that. And just being also making sure we're articulating very clearly expectations for both staff and students. So that would fall under that prior year outcomes. Under the requests category, we'll often get requests, not often, but occasionally get requests from school districts who have not previously had program or had a need for programming, and suddenly find themselves with maybe a new group of people moving in, and they reach out to us and ask if we could set up programming there. So that always becomes a consideration. That happened in the last year with one of our northernmost communities, Baudette. We also are realigning our consortium this next year. So one of our districts, one of the 30 districts, is actually aligning, has merged with another school district. And so they'll be moving to the Detroit Lakes or Lakes Area Consortium. And so that means a little bit of a really small, for us, a very small loss of funding, about $5,900 to the base, but it's a consideration as you're budgeting. Employer partners, we have in this past year been asked by one of our larger manufacturing firms to come in and help with a pilot. They want to hire 10 of our lowest level or lower level Somali speakers to be trained, and they actually want to pay them some time that they're working. They want ABE services to be part of their scheduled work week. And so that is something we're trying to get up and running. And so as I'm considering what I need to do with the budget next year, that's one of the things that's in the back of my head. Agency partners, the same thing is happening with other agencies. We have law enforcement centers that are now starting to ask for services again. And so it's been, since COVID, we really haven't been allowed in those facilities. So we're having to think about that a little bit and take that into consideration. There are always associated costs with doing business that, you always have to kind of keep in mind: lease agreements, partnerships that have been established for a long time, like with our colleges and so forth, that we want to always keep in. I always have to keep those as, on my screen, really, radar. emerging needs that I think about would be prospective students moving in. We have in our area 2 big, huge ag operations that are moving in. One is a pork operation, one is a beef operation. I think that has something to the tune of 10,000 head of cattle. And so they're bringing in foreign labor. And so we have to kind of think ahead about what impacts that might have on the ABE programs in that area. Refugee resettlement is always something we have to consider. In the past, many refugees were brought into the East Grand Forks community. And so have to always be reaching out and talking to our partners that are in the know with what's going to happen with that. And then we've had little strange things happen over the years. DigiKey, one of our largest manufacturers in the area, added up something like a 900,000 square foot facility. And, you know, they would hire 200 people today if they could. And so there's these big employers in our region, a lot of the snowmobile manufacturers, Marvin Windows and Doors, who occasionally have need for ABE to help out with some different things. DigiKey had some temporary construction workers that were coming in, all were foreign labor, none who spoke English. And so mid-year one year, you know, they asked us, can you offer programming for these people so that they can learn to speak a little bit better. So you always have to be thinking about those kind of things as you budget. We look at attendance patterns to make sure that the class times that we're offering classes are adequate, that the teachers are available when the students have the need. You know, sometimes those don't always match up very well, but we try to make sure we're have hours in place that are really best to serve the need, the learners. And then the last thing that I always consider is this level of staffing. We have a couple of staff members who are retiring, and with COVID, you know, it's always tossing a ball in the air to figure out, do you need to replace everybody, or can you go with maybe less staff for a while? And so those are some of the things that I'm thinking about right now. And you could go to the next slide if you would. This goes specifically to the staff level considerations. I think one of the biggest things I've done this year is considering our pay. We don't offer benefits, which is, I know, different than many ABE programs that are located in a school district. We're located in an educational cooperative service unit agency, so we don't offer benefits. So I want to always make sure that our pay is competitive with what's going on in other districts around us. And we've done that every 5 years. We reevaluate and we check to see, are we still in line, especially now as it's getting harder and harder to get teachers? Are we still in line with what they would make if they were working in a school district somewhere nearby? It turns out, as I did the analysis this year, that we have some significant gaps. The lowest gap was a $3.39 difference, and the highest was over $8. And so I actually am presenting to my board of directors and my personnel committee tomorrow night to barter a deal with them a little bit to bridge that gap in the next 2 fiscal years. So half of it in the coming year and then half of it the following year, after which they will just go back to giving cost of living increases. So I think it's important that our teachers, our staffing, it's the largest part of our budget, but if you don't do it right, it's, it has big impacts on your budget. And I want to make sure that we get and keep good people. And so I spend a lot of time really preparing in that way. And then you see some of the other things that come into consideration when it comes to staffing. I'm going to have you go to the next slide. The ongoing considerations are the things that they're just the little things, but but you have to keep them in the back of your mind when you're budgeting, because little things become big things if you forget about them. And so in the support services, part of our budget goes to pay for data input services like most people's, but for the first time, as I told you before, we also hired a technology coordinator. Now we have gotten so deep with technology that we could not have that position. So that will be an ongoing position, at least part-time always. We also have given some special projects off to certain people. And one of them is like the distance learning coordinator position. It just got to be that there was just too many things for me or one person to try to do them all. And so it makes more sense to kind of have some extra time off to people to specialize in some certain areas. And distance learning coordinator is one of those positions where we had a teacher who's interested in that, good at that, serves on the statewide distance learning committee or task force. So it made sense for her to be that coordinator position. And it takes a lot of the heat and the work off of the rest of the staff when you have somebody who's got their eye on the ball when it comes to the DL platforms. The other thing we really consider with distance learning is prior year usage. Do we have enough seats? Do we need more? Is there something we're not really putting to use and can put in the wayside? Technology, this year we spent a good chunk of our supplemental money. I think I put 65,000 into the budget for supplemental money to really update our technology, because I thought this is our chance to really finally get some decent technology in places that needed it, and we hadn't had the funds to do that. And so we will have to be thinking not so much in the next year about technology. There's always some ongoing expenses, of course, but down the line, how do we slowly replace them? When you buy them all in 1 year, what kind of a replacement plan do you have for those kind of things? And then we have, I think if I heard the other day, my tech director said we now have, it'll sound like small potatoes to others, but I think we have 50 or 60 iPads, which 13 months ago we had 12. So we have purchased the services of a mobile device management system. And so that's going to be an ongoing expense that we hadn't previously had to budget in. I've already talked a little bit about lease agreements and classroom space. In some locations, we are just paying sort of one amount per year, but in others, we have to also add in utilities and internet and things like that. So those are all little pieces of the budget that make a big difference if you forget to put them in there. And then special projects that we're involved in the past year, regional transitions money has been used to set up regional online classes. And we're not totally sure, how moving forward, if that will still be supported with regional money, or if we'll maybe need to start kind of chipping in some local money and then using the regional money to maybe develop new classes. So I have to keep thinking about that a little bit. We also have developed consortium online classes this past year. So those have been so good that there's no way we're going to let those go. We're going to only build on those because they've been very good for our program and for our learners. And so something else I have to keep in mind as I'm budgeting. I'll let you go to the next slide, please. And I think this is Kelly's slide. Thank you.
Yes, and we just had one question I want to circle back to. I believe it was on this page. Jill asked, did you say manufacturing? Just clarifying.
Yes, yep. Manufacturing and healthcare are two in-demand industries in this part of Minnesota. And the particular manufacturer was the French fry company. The company that makes French fries for McDonald's out of East Grand Forks is the one that is just in dire need of employees and is looking at new ways to employ people. And so they're the ones that want to pilot the program with us.
Awesome. Thank you so much. We will hear from Kelly now on the same question, and then there will be some time for you to ask questions of either panelist or to the whole group or comment. So if you're thinking about questions on this topic, you can start putting them in the chat. Kelly, I will invite you to come on.
I think I'm there. Can you see me?
Perfect. Yes.
Okay. Thank you. Hello again. It was just very interesting to listen to Kirsten talk. Our programs are very different, and I don't envy you with such a large landscape to serve. We are pretty compact here in the South Metro with the 4 districts. And Bloomington Public Schools is the fiscal agent, and we're a very big district. And we benefit. Our program, Metro South, benefits from being part of a very large district. We get some of the supports from the school district as well. So I'm very grateful for that. A little bit about me. I've been here for 33 years. I started as a teacher, so seen a lot of change in programming over those 30 some years. And I think we're more academic than ever, and our staff is wonderful, and they're really a joy to work with. one of the things that we do look at when we are considering budgeting for next year is contact hours, of course. I mean, you really need to consider that because that really covers the cost of running our classes for the most part. And we need to pay close attention to what we expect to have for revenue coming in, and then we set up our budget based on that. I just had a meeting this morning before this meeting here with you, talking about the budget. What are we doing for budgeting? Again, we meet pretty much every week because the final budget is due March 5th to our district. So some of the things that we also consider, we're applying for the civics grant, and we've had a civics grant for several years. That money we depend on for funding our career pathway programming. And we have an excellent career pathway program. We have community interpreter training, we have medical terminology, we have nursing assistant prep, we have child development associates, we have CDL, and an office support class and a personal care attendant. And those are all based on things that are needed in our area, in the South Metro, where the jobs are, and what some of our employers have said that they are, the skills that they need for the jobs that they have. Another thing that we need to consider as we budget, of course, is different from Kirsten. Our teachers are on not the K-12 contract, but there's a community ed contract. And we have just the teachers, the para, and the clerical have just ratified their contracts. So there's been an increase in pay. And we have to also consider that when we're doing our budgeting, because the same for Kristen, our salaries are a major part of our budget, of course. Another thing that we look at is our registrations. We have registrations. We operate with 5 terms per year. We have managed enrollment. And we have found that especially over the last month or so, that the student demand for classes is increasing. And what's interesting is the student demand for in-person class is increasing. And that doesn't mean that we're going to discontinue our classes that we're offering. We have 2 remote classes in the evening for higher levels. So we will continue with that for the future. We're planning on expanding that a little bit. So we had to consider that in our budget. We have a large student population at the higher level. They work during the week, and they really do prefer having the remote classes available to them. Our current class sizes, we found that our attendance is beginning to be more stable, which is a good thing. But we're not yet back to our pre-COVID levels. We're inching a little closer. So we are confident that with the way that the data is suggesting that COVID is on, a downward trend, that there will be even more demand for classes again. And again, I did talk about the uptick for registration for our classes. We have a lot of people who are calling. They want to come back to school. They want to be in person. And we also consider other requests from the other districts that we serve. Their community ed directors, I meet with them, and they have requests also for programming. And the one request that constantly comes up is adding more family lit courses. We do have a family lit class right now in Eden Prairie, and we're hoping to expand that a little bit more level of intensity for that. And then we're looking at exploring a starting family lit in Edina and Richfield as well. Next slide, please.
Great. Thank you so much, Kelly.
Yeah, I know it wasn't as pretty as Kristen's, but I am happy to answer any questions.
Thank you so much. So yes, we're going to open it up here and give folks an opportunity to ask any follow-up questions of Kelly or Kirsten about the great information and thinking that they shared. And then we'd also like to broaden the conversation. We'd love to hear from some others who are on the webinar today. What are you considering as you're planning for next year, as you think about your budgets, as you think about your programming? What information are you looking at? What data are you looking at? So you can put something in the chat, or we'd love to hear your voices. So encourage people to raise their hands and unmute. Are you thinking about the same things that our colleagues just shared, or are there other things on your minds? So Laura's typing in site needs based on attendance. Yep, looking at those attendance patterns for your different sites. I see Tracy, you have your hand up. Go ahead.
Well, I hate to say this, but when I hear, from Kirsten that they do not do benefits, I'm killed by benefits and all that. And as they have said, the majority of my monies go for, wage and fringe, and our fringe can be really, really high. And I want to be equitable. I want to be, do a fair wage and all of that, but sometimes it's really hard because it's like you don't have enough money to do that.
Tough decisions, right? It's weighing all of those costs versus being competitive. I know that many ABE programs, or just education in general, are struggling with finding candidates for their open positions. I don't know if others want to chime in the chat how you weigh those two things and your considerations. Thanks, Tracy. Anyone else want to unmute and share what you are thinking about?
I could perhaps just speak real briefly to what Tracy just said, because Tracy's consortium and mine are similar in size and in service, and when I inherited it, I guess maybe I would say back in 2005, they hadn't yet at that point offered benefits. It was something I did consider and looked into, but you're right that we would have had to lose 2 teachers just to pay for the benefits for 8 teachers at that time. And we have always been in this situation, and I guess it's a blessing that most of our staff are in relationships that where they have access to benefits from their spouse. And so, but it is an ongoing, it is an issue that I think is actually getting more important, because a lot of the newer teachers might be single or might be in a situation where they don't have that. One of the benefits that we do offer is that they get the same hourly pay, but they work more hours in a year than a teacher at the K-12 does. The teachers at K-12 often work 1,480 hours a year. Many of our teachers are teacher with the most hours is over 1,600. So there's a little more, they get a nice paycheck, a little more of a paycheck, but they're working year round.
Right.
And then the other thing that we also offer is some paid holidays, which, it's something. It's not the best, but it's something. So just things to think about.
Thank you, Kirsten. Nate, I see you have your hand up. Go ahead, Nate.
Yeah, I think one of the things that we're starting to talk about, so I'm from Central Minnesota East. One of the things we're talking about is how do we leverage the money that we're going to have this year that we may not have going forward. So we have a decrease in hours, but we're still getting funding for those hours. So we're looking at more of those career development type programs and just trying to figure out how can we increase our hours now while we have the funding to do it, instead of possibly ending up in a hole in a year.
Exactly. That was one of the things that we discussed as we were planning this webinar, is thinking about how to use that additional funding strategically to perhaps generate more funding in the future, and also just to be aware of some of the additional costs that might come with, for example, tech purchases that you might be making without additional funding. You'll need to replace those technologies down the line. Let's see. Lindsay, can you help me with the chat? Do we want to call out any of them?
Yes, there are great comments. I know that Emily, at the last comment, there's a question to address.
Let's see. So Emily asked, we have a family literacy program for others in the state with family lit. Do you have an ABE, paid or volunteer position in your packed parenting time to collect those contact hours? So maybe invite folks to chime in the chat in response to Emily's program. I see Jill DeShane is making the suggestion that perhaps compiling some of that wage information around the state so people have a sense of what's happening in surrounding districts. I know that Literacy Action Network in the past has done some salary surveys, so perhaps that would be something to propose and consider for the future. Emily's also weighing in on the issue of a large portion of her budget, 92% is salary and benefits, and just making the point that if we have level funding, in some ways that's a decrease because the staffing numbers don't stay flat. Anything else we should call out, Lindsay, before we move on to our other guiding question?
I don't think so. I mean, please keep the conversation going. I know there was a earlier conversation as well about some numbers, I think the table A1. And so we welcome those side conversations. You're here all in one spot to kind of pick each other's brains. So keep the comments coming, but yeah, I think we'll move to our next question. So I'll invite Kirsten to come back on and speak a little bit about what new things are you planning and hoping to fund and why, and what are you going to discontinue and why?
Okay, as we're thinking about new considerations, you know, one of the things we keep thinking about is the money that we got this year for supplemental money, which of course is only going to be here through June 30th. And we were really strategic about using that in ways that wouldn't harm us, hopefully, down the line. So, as I'm looking at new considerations, I'm thinking about what did we spend that money on and how is that going to benefit us in the coming year and what can we do with it? So looking at some of the things that I've done, I'm going to skip over to the third column there with course development and career awareness kits, because one of the things that we are now looking into doing is purchasing career awareness kits through project. Now I'm not going to remember the name of the project, but there's a group that specializes in transitions education, and they have kits that you can purchase that have ready-made lessons that you can use with students, and all in this sort of realm of career awareness. And specifically, my staff has said they want to look at these 5 kits that are listed there, because those are the fields of work that most of especially the new Americans, are going into in their communities. And the kits have not only hands-on tools. So for instance, when you get a construction kit, it comes with a lot of hands-on tools and lessons to introduce somebody to concepts of construction. But it also comes with a lot of soft skills lessons. So it's about 90 hours per kit of lessons that are developed. So that's one of the things that we'll use the supplemental money for, but we hope it's going to benefit us down the road. We also have been really thinking about this with our supplemental money. Going back to the first comment that I have there about hiring and assigning a consortium remote testing specialist, we purchased 600 units each of TABE and CASAS online tests. And, you know, we're several months later, and it's been hard, to say the least, to figure out how to get all those up and going across sites that are in different communities. And they're very familiar with using the paper and pencil version. And so that's where they usually fall back on, especially if the students are in the classroom. However, as we begin to offer online regional classes and online consortium classes, And even in our partnerships with the college, many of our math classes are online. And so there's a real need to be able to remotely assess learners. And I have just thrown around the idea, do we train everybody, or do we just maybe hire somebody who really gets good at it and can then do that work, can create an online calendar and people can sign up, and then they'll just do remote proctoring of those tests. And that is actually the direction I think we're going to lean toward next year. But that all takes a little bit of thought and planning long before you turn in a budget. Expanding our online course offerings is going to be a big thing for us. We used to offer classes at a site level. After COVID hit, we were all scrambling. Everybody just took the students that they had in person and started teaching them online. And some of those students have been loving it. The issue for me as a budgeter, I think, is that it's hard to justify paying a teacher maybe to work with one student at a time or two students at a time on an online class. So we are really looking at possibly moving all of our classes from a local model of online to a consortium model of online. We have talked about, and I just need to determine whether or not I have the guts to move forward with hiring somebody whose sole job it is to teach online classes, which is not something we've ever done before. And then we've had a lot of discussion about some possible class offerings that we think would really benefit us. We have a lot of adult diploma students, but for whatever reason, those students don't often like to come into class. They just want to work on their stuff at home and they want to email it to us to look over. And so we've been just trying to sort of mystified about how do you get them to come into the classroom. And so you're collecting contact hours for the work you're doing, which it's more work than many of the other students and classes that we do. We've talked about offering some online specific classes for essay writing for the adult diploma, but also for GED. We have a lot of low-level ESL students who would be interested in classes if we could figure out the right time of day to offer them. We are currently offering a citizenship class for an upper level course of students. We ran it for lower level and we didn't have anybody that signed up for it because they think that they can wait till they know when their citizenship interview is scheduled, and by then we feel like it's too late. And then another class we're really considering is like online learning. We've talked about that at a regional level. We've also talked about it at a local level, that it's important for students to kind of know what they're getting into before we put them into these classes, because you end up wasting the first few 2 or so classes just showing them how to be an online learner. So that is kind of some of the things that we're hoping to fund in the coming year. And if you could go to the next slide, I'll just briefly talk about some things we're considering discontinuing. I think I told you earlier that we have a teacher who, for part of her hours that she gets are to oversee our distance learning platforms, and she does a great job of it. She puts in the distance learning contact hours for all of the teachers across the consortium at the end of every month. She takes a look at, she bargains and barters with the publishers of those to come up with pricing for new platforms, and she always notifies me when our seats are expiring and so forth. And then she does a great job of analyzing usage and seeing really where our teachers and students are, which platforms are we using that the teachers and students really seem to like the best and use most. And so we have several that are paid platforms, and then many that are free and just accessible to us. But we likely next year will completely discontinue ESL Library. We pay $408 for 200 seats, so it's very cheap. However, it's only been used for an hour and a half this entire year, so I don't think that's something we'll put money toward again. And we also are considering discontinuing the Reading Horizons program. We've had it for years. It's a great program. It's an online version of intensive phonics. And we have some legacy pricing. We only pay $550 a year for 5 seats, so it's pretty cheap. However, the teacher who uses it is retiring. And so I have to kind of consider whether somebody else will use it, or maybe we put that money into another area. The other thing I already talked about was eliminating site-based online courses in lieu of a bit more on consortium online courses where you have more students involved. So it's a little bit easier to pay a $35 or $40 an hour teacher when you have enough students in the course to at least generate contact hours to pay for the teacher's time. And then my last consideration thing that I'm thinking about is we have in one site, one of our largest sites has both of its teachers retiring at the end of the year, thanks to COVID, I think in part, but also for their own personal reasons are also leaving. So I have been kind of debating what to do with those positions. Do I replace both of them or do I just start with one new hire? One of the positions is spends a lot of time working with the college with the developmental math program. She's embedded in 5 math programs. However, that instructor is also thinking about retiring. And as you know, with DevEd or college partnerships, oftentimes it's not about so much what you do as who you know and who you have partnered with. And so I'm just afraid once he leaves, they are probably not going to want to continue that same model that he's been using for the last 7 or 8 years. So those are some of the things that I'm thinking I'm going to probably change or have to change in the coming year.
Thank you. And I just have one question from Patsy, wondering about the online offerings. Are they largely live or asynchronous?
They're all synchronous. All of ours right now are synchronous. We have offered fast track GED courses. They're 8 weeks in duration and they meet 2 times a week for 2 hours a night. We're offering citizenship, which is a little longer than 8 weeks. It meets 3 times a week for an hour and a half. And then the other, I'm trying to think of what the other courses are, but we also are offering a class where we're using a platform that we purchased that has not yet been vetted and approved for proxy contact hours. And so we're running it as kind of a hybrid thing where we meet with learners for an hour and a half twice a week virtually and pre-teach some of the concepts. And then they go home and they work in the platform itself. It's a platform that helps them build their soft skills. It's a fantastic platform. And we're working on trying to get enough hours and evidence that we can submit it to the state so that could become a proxy contact hour platform for anybody in the state who wants to use it. But right now, all of our online classes are live, synchronous online classes. And we purchased Clever Touch boards, which are similar to a smart board, but in my opinion, much more easy to use. And they have been sort of a game changer for us in teaching these online classes.
Awesome. Thank you so much for expanding on that. Okay, I'm going to invite Kelly to come back on and answer the same question. And then again, we will create space after Kelly is done sharing for you to ask questions or unmute and share. So be thinking about what you might want to add or say.
Hi again. Well, we use some of our one-time funding to train all of our teachers on how to build a Canvas course because we wanted to set ourselves up for another avenue to generate proxy hours in the future. And teachers are also using the Canvas course as kind of a repository for all of their curriculum as well. If in the event that we do go online or we need to be online, they can use the Canvas course, or we have plans next year for this teacher to teach in person, teach their class, and then their homework that they give to the students will be on the Canvas platform, and the student will be doing the work, and that will generate proxy hours. So with that being said, it's been a long journey. Building a Canvas class is not something that you do in a week or two. We have 10 4-hour trainings this year. So our teachers are putting together their courses, and we have found throughout this that teachers will probably need ongoing support and help next year as they expand the course. So that is one thing that I'm considering adding a budget line for that because we need to fund that as well. We also would like to buy more student site licenses for IXL. We have been paying for MobiMax, and will discontinue our paid MobiMax subscription and just go with the free subscription. We're not having as much of an interest in MobiMax as we did when we launched it about 3 years ago. So we're looking for some new, fresh content. And we have used IXL with some of our classes this year, and the students like it. The teachers like it, and what we like is that it is scaffolded. So it starts at a lower level and goes all the way up through 12th grade. So what we plan to do is assign certain parts of IXL to teachers based on which level that they're teaching. We also would like to apply for 2 CTEPs. Right now we have 1 CTEP. And the reason why we're going to go with 2 CTEPs is because we also have an employment navigator, opportunity navigator, and they are discontinuing that AmeriCorps program. And we would like to use the second CTEP for help with our students to build online resumes, take care of their online applications, do online job searches as well. So that is one of the plans that we're going to do. So it's really just moving some money from one budget line to another. We will continue our Tuesday, Thursday online remote pilot class. I think I talked about that earlier, but we're going to expand the time. Right now it's an hour and a half each night, but we're going to expand it to 2 3/4 hours. And then we're also going to add another online class on Tuesday, Thursday. So we'll have 2 higher level courses. We plan on reducing our summer class offerings. Last year, we were back on campus and we didn't have students. We typically, even before COVID, we found out that our students started to kind of disappear right around the 4th of July holiday. And we realized that everybody needs a break. So our plan is to reduce our summer class offerings and perhaps offer 1 or 2 ESL classes, more classes that are specialty classes, maybe writing for a certain level of ESL, or a pronunciation class, or a civics class. And then we use some of our one-time money to expand our marketing and outreach to get students back into the building, to let people know. And we have worked with a company, and they have set us up with geofencing, which is a pretty unique way to attract attention or get the word out about a program or product or anything. So we're dropping fences around areas where we know our students work or worship or play or shop, and just to let them know that we have classes here. And we're now beginning to track to see if people are coming in from the geofence. When there's an impression or a click, we are able now to track to see if they access our website, and then from the website, if they do come in, if we have foot traffic in the building and they are in a registration and then enrolled in classes. So that has been really, really interesting. And we found out that our website, the website that we have currently, isn't as secure as we want it to be, especially with all the geofencing and all of the other things that we're using the website for. So now we're using the one-time funds to redo the website. So next year, we still need to pay for website maintenance and website any enhancements. So we need to budget for that as well. So there is a lot of things that we learned from using the one-time funds, and we're very appreciative of having that, but it has changed our budget a little bit. If you look back about 10 years ago, we wouldn't have been talking about geofencing, and we wouldn't have been talking about, website enhancement or any of those things, or supporting digital integration. So those are the plans that we have for this year. That's about all I have right now.
Thanks so much, Kelly. I see we've got a couple of follow-up questions already for you
Okay.
in the chat. So let's see. One question from Laura was whether students have actively been using the Canvas courses.
No, what this year is being used to build.
Okay.
So it is building, and we didn't want teachers who felt comfortable starting to roll theirs out. We want everybody kind of in the same place. So we have consistency across the program. Our teachers are expected to prepare and build a Canvas class. We have a rubric for that, and their classes are supposed to be done by May, and we're going to be checking on those. And then we just want to make sure that everybody has pretty much the same basic elements in each course. So it's familiar to students as they progress through our program.
That's great. Really taking this year to thoughtfully build and plan for that and get the teachers ready. That makes a lot of sense. And then Tracy is wondering, when you reduce your summer programming, what happens to the instructors?
Well, okay, good question. Our instructors have a 203 day, I think that's what their allocation is, which includes working September or the last week in August when we have our back to school week, all the way through June 30th. So it's extra money, like a summer school extra assignment is what they get. So, and we started doing this a few years, we started to gradually reduce summer because we had a lot of teachers saying, I don't want to work in July. And I don't want to. So we found out a way to, you know, kind of meet their needs as instructors. They wanted the time off and it was extra pay anyway. So we started to think, why are we doing this, especially when our attendance numbers were dropping. So.
Right. Okay, good. And then we have another question from Emily around marketing. She's wondering if you have a website that is separate from your district, and she's reflecting maybe because they're a single district consortium, they're more tied to the district than a multi-district consortium. And they're hoping to break free and looking from examples for examples from around the state. So I'll let Kelly answer. And then if others who are on the webinar would like to share a link to their consortium website, I invite you to put that in the chat.
We did have a website that we created years back, metrosouth.org, and it was kind of disjointed from the district, and it was a link on the district page. Now what we're doing is we are rebuilding the website, but the district just rebuilt their website as well. So we're working with the same company. It'll still be specific to our program, but it will work with all the inner workings of the district website. I don't know if that makes sense to you. I am not a webmaster, but I am trying to understand this. Our security was not good. We didn't have really good security with the website that we had. So we're working with a company named 10-7, and they're building the website for us, but they're keeping it kind of with the same framework that our district has as well. And then we're going to be able to link this to the website in Richfield, the website in Edina, and the website in Eden Prairie.
Great.
It's going to be a little more user friendly, and it's going to be more updated, and we're really happy with what it's going to look like. So that's, we use some of that money for that too.
Excellent. Thank you. Well, thank you so much for sharing. I think at this point, we are going to have Lindsay set us up for some breakout rooms where we can continue the discussion and give you an opportunity to share what you're planning and hoping for in the coming year with others from similar contexts. I'll turn over to you, Lindsay.
Awesome. So we definitely want to make sure you have time to connect in small groups. So what we are going to do is have you choose a breakout room according to context. So you can self-select and then fill out some thoughts on a Padlet. So I'm going to quickly, before we put you in breakout rooms, show you this Padlet, what it looks like. And so we have 4 different options: one room schoolhouse, corrections, a large leveled program, or a CBO smaller program. So wherever you most identify, you can select that breakout group when we launch them. And And then there are these questions to answer, and they're the same questions for each group. So if you're in the One Room Schoolhouse group, if you keep scrolling, you'll see that there are 5 questions. You don't have to answer every single one, but maybe choose some questions that stand out to your group. And then you can add comments, your answers or your questions here. But then we'll have all of these in one place. And if there's something that we want to follow up on in an email or a future administrator session, then we will be able to do that. So we would love to have a record of your notes. In your groups, you will be able to someone, if they want to, you will be able to share your screen. And so if someone is comfortable with Padlet and wants to share their screen, you can, or you can all access the link as well. So I know Patsy put the link in the chat. We will do 15 minutes. We'll have about 13 minutes of regular time, and then there'll be a 2-minute countdown. You don't have to come back right when the 2-minute countdown begins. It's just giving you a heads up to kind of start wrapping up your conversation. Yeah, if you have questions about what we're doing, please put it in the chat, but we will be able to help you get to your room if you don't see a choice pop up soon. But yeah, we hope this is a great time for you to just connect with people in a similar context.
We are just going to do a couple moments of wrap up here since we're almost at time. And I want to thank Lindsay for her help in putting this webinar together. And of course, Kelly and Kirsten for their help sharing all of their expertise from their various parts of the state. So this Padlet, we know many of you did not have a chance to put in too much to it. So we'll send that out in a follow-up email that you can continue using and sharing on that platform. So never fear, it's not going anywhere. We just have a couple of announcements here by means of wrap up, but we aren't going anywhere. Like if you have questions you want to ask each other or us, we'll be here. So feel free to stick around. Just a couple extra things here. So by means of wrap up, we just want to be sure you know there will be another administrator focus session at the statewide virtual conference that's coming up on Friday, April 22nd. That's 2 months away, but it will go fast. Please join us for that. So if you want to mark your calendar and just plan to spend the day at it's what we would normally do as a regional, of course, unable to do that this year, but we'll be having that virtual conference all day on Friday, the 22nd of April, and registration will open about a month prior. And then of course, Marisa, if you can find that link, oh, you already did, the link for us. And then the Mighty Networks is another way you can continue to stay connected to each other. And we encourage you to join the administrator group there. So those are all of my announcements. I just want to thank all of you for joining us, and to Kelly, Kirsten, and Lindsay in particular. And I'm going to stop sharing and allow people, if they have additional questions. I know Jody is still here, Astrid is still here. If you have questions for us, you're welcome to come on camera and do that.
I also put the link to the evaluation, which has the CEUs embedded in it. So if you could fill out that evaluation, that's how you will get your CEUs as well. Thanks so much.
Great, and thanks to Marisa for being our tech support here. So you're welcome to go if you need to. We know things are busy. If you want to come on camera and continue the conversation, we'll stick around for a few minutes.